Our app is looking pretty good, and we're pretty far along. We're almost done with our exercises here. Now, before we move on to adding the text, there are a couple of finishing touches that I'd like for us to do together. We're going to make some adjustments to some of the things that we've already done, and then we're going to add a couple of elements that are missing. So the first thing I want to do here is this blue bar, this thin blue bar that runs through the middle. I'm going to hit Command 2 to zoom in on that. That's actually the progress bar. That's going to show the progress of the track that's playing in our audio app. The problem is right now it's a blue bar that runs all the way across, and the app developers are not going to understand what we're trying to demonstrate here. So I'm going to hold Shift and Command, and I'm going to press my left arrow to pull that bar back. And you'll notice that there is white underneath. And now, if I'd like for unplayed progress to be anything but white, I've got to create another rectangle and put it back there. So I'm actually going to undo what we've done here, get the bar back to its original length. And instead of shortening it and then going and creating another bar, I'm going to press Command D on the keyboard for duplicate. And on the layers list, you can see I now have progress bar and progress bar 2. So if we start shortening progress bar 2, again, I'm going to hold Shift and Command and press the left arrow to shorten it. Since it's blue on blue, I can't really see it getting shorter, but once my bounding box reappears, you can see that I have shortened my bar. So now I can grab the progress bar that's further back, and I'm honestly going to rename this before I get confused. And I'm going to name this Unplayed Progress. And I'm going to rename my top layer Played Progress, just so it's not confusing here. Here we go. And now with Unplayed Progress selected, I'm going to go over to my fill, and I'm going to go with a dark gray. Not too dark, but dark enough that it looks like it's unplayed. It looks inactive. So with that done, I'm now going to go back to my played progress. I'm going to shorten it even more. I'm going to go back to Shift and Command. And remember, Command is allowing me to nudge the width of this, and Shift is allowing me to do that 10 pixels at a time. That's why I'm holding Shift and Command and using the left arrow. So I'll make it not quite in the center, I'll make it a little further along. And then I also want to create a little scrubber head that's on there. So the user of the app will be able to grab that with their finger, rewind or fast forward. So I'm going to hit R to get my rectangle tool. I'm going to draw a teeny tiny little rectangle here. And you'll notice that it's being covered up by our album art. So we're going to have to reposition this. In fact, I can grab this rectangle and the playback progress and move all of these layers up. As long as they're above the box that contains my blurred out album art, I'm not going to have a problem with the top of it getting clipped off. So the gray's cool and everything, but I'm going to go over here to fill. So I'm going to get rid of the border. I'm going to switch the fill to a white fill. That makes it look a little bit more grabbable, stands out a little bit more. And then I'm going to throw a shadow behind it, just a subtle little shadow. I'm going to reduce the blur, and I'm also going to have it poke out only 1 pixel out of the bottom. So a subtle little blur on that shadow that makes it pop out more. Without that shadow, it kind of blended in. It didn't look so three-dimensional, so that shadow is going to help a little bit. Now next, I think this button here looks a little bit naked. It's kind of a big button, and in our final design, and for those of you who have peeked ahead of the final design, there's a blue ring. There's like a glowing blue ring around this button that allows me to see that it's playing. We're not going to demonstrate both states of the play button being on and off. I mean, you could if you're feeling ambitious. You could do multiple screens to demonstrate functionality, but I do want to get that blue ring on there. Now, what I'm going to do, because I want the blue ring to be perfectly centered up with this ring, is I'm going to use Command D again. I'm going to select this, use Command D for duplicate to duplicate the circle. I'm going to hold Shift and Option to allow me to scale it inward a little bit. And then I'm going to get rid of the shadows. I'm going to get rid of the fill, and I'm just going to add a border on my inspector. And then I'm going to make that a smidge thicker, but first I'm going to steal this shade of blue that we have, and then I'm going to make it less bright by dragging down the brightness just a little bit. Maybe we'll go down to 80 for brightness. Now I'm going to get rid of the color swatch and make it, we could probably do a thickness of 2 pixels. That's looking good. We don't want it to stand out too much. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my forward and back arrows, and I'm going to make them a little bit larger. I'm going to hold Shift and Command, make them a little bit larger like this, even a little bit larger than that. I'm holding Shift and Command so I can do them both at the same time, outward from the center, and constrain the proportions. And now I'll grab these guys and I'll Shift nudge them to the left a few times, Shift nudge this one to the right a few times. Now they should be lined up perfectly relative to one another because I hit shift and the arrow the same number of times, but I want them to be perfect. So I'm just going to nudge a couple more times, and I'm going to hold option again to see how far from the edge this is. So this one's 26 pixels from the edge. Let's see this guy, 26 pixels from the edge. So that's looking good. It almost looks like they could be nudged up a little bit. Yeah, if we look here, this one happened to end up 48 pixels from the top and 38 pixels from the bottom. So it's 10 pixels too low. So I'll shift tap that up. Now that doesn't look right either. I believe I made a mistake here. I need 5 pixels up, and that should do the trick. So I'm going to select these arrows, hold shift. I need to go up 1 more pixel, and I want them to match, so I'll go up 1 pixel over here. So now these are looking pretty good. In fact, I kind of want to nudge 1 pixel to the right, 1 pixel to the left. So we got 25 from the left edge, and then 43, 43 top to bottom. And then the 33 on the right, this is kind of an optical thing. I'm eyeballing it because if we center this up mathematically, it's not going to look quite right optically because the shape has more weight to it on the right side than it does on the left. That's just how sideways triangles are. So I'm just going to leave that as is. So I've got my 25, 43, 43, and then over here, 25, 43, 43. So looking good, just kind of fine-tuning things here a little bit. Now the next thing I want to do, you may have noticed this in the final design, I want to select this big box. This is my control box here. And with this control box selected, I'm going to add a second fill. I'm going to add a fill, and I'm going to choose the radial gradient for my type of fill here. Now this radial gradient fill is filling it with the dark gray and filling it with white. That's just what it defaulted to. Now I'm cool with the white. I'm totally cool with that, but I don't want the black to show up. And instead of spending the time to adjust the gradient, I'm going to revisit blend modes just to give you guys another quick demo of blend modes in action. So here where it says blending normal, I'm going to switch that to screen. Screen is going to keep the white at 100% opacity, or whatever opacity it was originally, and it's going to have anything that's less than white become progressively more transparent. So the white is the only thing that shows through. Now by unchecking this and rechecking this, you can see that it just gives it sort of a material light source. So that's looking pretty good. Excellent. Now earlier I made a mistake here. I had my 2 little satellite buttons here have a shadow that comes out the bottom, which makes them look like they're sticking out. Even though the buttons are sticking out because they're rounded that way, I want the buttons to look like they're set in the control panel, like they're kind of indented, because they are. I mean, they're essentially cut out. The plastic for the control panel's cut out so that a button can protrude through that cutout. So I'm going to adjust my shadow here. I'm going to make it a negative number so it sticks out the top. Then I'm going to add a second shadow. This shadow is going to be white, and this white shadow is going to stick out the bottom just a little bit. I'm going to reduce the blur down to 3. I'm going to reduce the Y position down to 1, so it's a very subtle effect. And now that's looking good. It looks like the buttons are actually inset a little bit, just a little tiny bit. And you know, I could bring up the blur on my top shadow, so that way it looks a little softer. It doesn't have to be a completely hard edge. But I think I'm satisfied with that appearance for now, so we'll leave that as is. And then the next thing is, up at the top here, we added a shadow to this white icon here, but we didn't share that style amongst all of the other white icons. So with this white icon selected, I'm going to go to where it says no shared style. I'm going to create a new shared style, and I'm going to name it small white icon, so that way all my small white icons match. Now this one already has that style, but I want to make sure if I change the style that they remain in sync. So I'm also going to switch it from no shared style to small white icons, because that's what it is. Then I'm going to select these 2 down here and do the very same thing, switch that to small white icons. Perfect. So that's looking good. I'll hit Command 1 to go back. And now I think we've just about done it for our finishing touches, and we're ready to add some text.